Show them what you can do. Please show them what you can do. I say show them what you can do. You make this parade a mere charade if you're marching just for fun. Our troops must feel your thanks for real before the marching is done. They know side by side you can match their stride to the drum beat and the brass, but they're not impressed with you unless you can match their stride in class. This may not sound too diplomatic, but I cannot be more emphatic as I tell you, it's problematic when you do less than your best. Especially when it's because you put your brilliance on pause for the mere peer applause it draws from a so-called friend doing less. Quit playing, I'm saying, you know that you are great, and we know it, so show it. Don't make our heroes wait. In this parade, please wave your grades at the brave who fight for you. If you don't gain, they fight in vain. Show them what you can do. Show them what you can do. Please show them what you can do. For those of you who already do the things that make us proud, your nation in appreciation says thanks to you out loud. Your schoolmates should imitate the way you tap your potential. Let me try to convince them why their effort is essential. Our men and women in uniform, before, during, and after Desert Storm, always perform above the norm, anywhere and everywhere on the planet. They need to follow our heroes' lead, but they cannot lead if they cannot read. Allow me, please, to plant this seed. Don't take freedom for granted. I'm serious, I'm furious to see U.S. schools behind. Remove the clatter, it's just a matter of our making up our minds. In this parade, please wave your grades at the brave who fight for you. If you don't gain, they fight in vain. Show them what you can do. Show them what you can do. Please show them what you can do. We believe in you, warriors protect you to do what you must to rise. Please do your part. Please start before another warrior dies. In this parade, please wave your grades at the brave who fight for you. If you don't gain, they fight in vain. Show them what you can do. Show them what you can do. Please show them what you can do. They sacrifice for you. Show them what you can do. Please show them what you can do. Please.
Good afternoon and welcome to Wave Your Grades on KUAW.org, the academic patriotism program that is dedicated to veterans and serious secondary scholars. I am your announcer, KUAW Wilson. Now here is our host, civilian urban educator, Carl Boyd.
Thank you so very, very much, KUAW Wilson. KUAW Wilson is our producer, engineer, announcer, and co-host. And if you acronymize it, that acronym would spell peach. She is a real peach, and she does a wonderful job. As a matter of fact, in studio with us is the founder of KUAW.org, and his name is Louis George Walker. And he and KUAW were setting up what I pray is available to our audience, a very special introduction to our very special guest, Anthony Butler and Sister KUAW. Are we ready with that already? That's outstanding. Let's do this.
Educators, teachers, you do more than teach. The ripple effect you have is hard to quantify. Bottom line, your reach stretches far beyond your outstretched hands, far beyond our classroom lands, far beyond your schools. Your influence rules for generations to come because you are a teacher, reacher, part-time preacher, greeter, parent-teacher conference meter, fueling dreams heater, figuratively and literally waking up sleepers, underpaid, overworked, underappreciated. You overcomer, find a way to free the hated, testing, lessons, blessings, cleaning up mess and you still smile, often quasi-raising someone else's child while being disrespected, rejected, disgusted, keeping it real some days, tempted to walk out the door, but you remember your core values and valiantly wear your rings and you soar. Quick, tell me who didn't make it where they are without you? There are few who can lay still bump and ball in your shoes, who didn't cross your path, who wasn't affected by your craft, your scare, your just shape up glare, glowing like lights to light up multiple worlds, inspiring boys and girls from within. So I'll say it again, tell me who like you, who's truly called and meant for this, fit for this, loved by many students who left you letters that you routinely read and make your eyes mist. Tell me who gets the power of changing nations, impacting generations. Tell me who, and I'll tell you, that's you.
This drove you and I to hop in and lock in and hurl our rocks into a sea.
Oh, and by the way, let me throw some worldwide shade. It shouldn't take a pandemic for some of y'all to respect their game, their craft, their championship banners hanging from the rafters year after year. We hear the laughters in a hall. Ain't it funny? After the laughter, tears stream down faces. Educators, you capture the hurting and broken hearts, the fractures. This Chapters of Life book has so many twists.
We are still unpacking. Life unopened box tucked in a corner, taped up tight. You grabbed what you needed and decided to fight. Much respect, kind of like open mic night, and I'm flowing out the dome. Spontaneous and spectacular, I digress. Let's get back to this. Fuel gauge on zeros, heroes, fumes running you. Heroes, zooms coming for you. Heroes rocking customized running shoes. Heroes, sometimes fear, anger, and sadness is running you while you running into schools. Think in terms of this. Heroes, you walked in with eyes wide open, pupils watching intently. You didn't make it this far accidentally. Heroes, we need to feel your fuel gauge. Filled when you get an unexpected hug. Filled when someone loves you just because. Filled when you see progress that goes beyond tests. Filled when you find a couple of extra fries tucked in the corner of your fast food bag surprise. Who knew the power of potatoes? Boom, that's proof. You constantly contemplate and genuinely grapple, tackle tough issues, have numerous apples, planning long, righting wrongs, singing songs, go on and on and on and on and on, changing, teaching, reading, confronting our society's crisis with numbers and words that flow from your soul and settle in the heart of our youth. Who knew? Walkthroughs, safe seats, class rules, memorable safety drills in the heat or cold. Let's give you educators a standing O, because you are one of those who chose this profession because you can't.
Anthony Butler. As a matter of fact, DeQuay Wilson, our producer, engineer, announcer, co-host, has set up the cameras so that you can see the smile on my face. But you cannot see all of the smiles that are in this studio. But my goodness, there is no better introduction than by your own words. Thank you, Anthony Butler, for being with us this afternoon.
You're welcome, Mr. Boyd. Thank you so much for the invite.
This is really absolutely encouraging because I often say, Brother Louis George Walker and Sister DeQuay, that the reason Anthony Butler is so important is because his presentation is on prevention. It is not on what we need to do later. It is not on those who have made the unfortunate mistake and continue in the rehabilitative process, but to ask the question, how can we prevent it before it gets to that point? And with that introduction, and thank you to Anthony Butler, how are you being received, and who is your principal audience?
Well, I'll say I'm being received very well.
Praise God.
Yeah,
that is so important.
Hey, I thank God for it. My principal audience would be the education sector.
Okay.
And going into schools and educational institutions and breaking it down, I say affectionately, from 3 to 103.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And so just looking forward to continue to educate in that capacity.
And by the way, Louis George Walker and DeQuay might come up. The reason I always say that is because when I am turned to our guest, I might not see you when you want to come in and grab the microphone. But this is so bare. And by the way, Louis George Walker, because we have you right here, right now, let us indeed let our guest and those who are joining us know the various ways, not only that they can join us this moment, but how they can call it up later as well.
That's right. That's right. I want to welcome everybody to this show today of Wave Your Grades, and you're listening to it on KUAW Radio. That stands for Knowledge, Understanding, and Wisdom. KUAW is a product of the Black Family Technology Awareness Association and the W.E.B. Du Bois Learning Center, who came together to form this station. You can pick us up if you're looking at us right now live on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, on Twitch. You can also hear us on the audio side if you go to Get Me Radio, the online radio bot, My Radio Tuner, Radio Garden, and other sources. You also, if you have a smart speaker, like your Google or Amazon, you just tell it to play KUAW Radio and we come on there. And locally, if you're in the 18th and Vine area or within 3 miles of it, you can pick us up on 100.5 FM. That's coming out of KOJH, which stands for Kansas City's original jazz house. So we broadcast live over that on this show too. So there's a lot of ways to listen to KUAW. We hope that you will listen, like this show, share it with friends, and go back and play it again and again.
Thank you so very, very much. That's Louis George Walker, founder of KUAW, KUAW.org. And Brother Anthony Butler, you mentioned something before we did that announcement that intrigues me. Mm-hmm. I started teaching in 1964, 7th and 8th grade science. So people would say to me, man, I know you have a thing with these teenagers, man. They must. But I think you said 3 to 103.
Yes.
How does that manifest, and how would you present it to us today?
Well, I'll say I look at it from the standpoint of the root reasons for violence is mismanaged hurt. And you just think that is something that connects with everyone. We all get hurt.
Yes, sir.
And when we don't manage our hurt, we typically take it out on ourselves or someone else. Mm-hmm. And so typically in the school setting, I just take that hurt example. And even looking back from a biblical standpoint, the first murder in the Bible that was manifested when you think about Cain and Abel, and it was hurt and the internal, the jealousy and being upset, and that led to, murder within the family. But in the school standpoint, I just think about when you're hurt, whether you're 3, whether you're 14, whether you're 18, whether you're 22, what do you do with that hurt? Does that hurt typically cause you to want to say hurtful things to someone else, do hurtful things to someone else? And then I take that and put it in an age-appropriate way using reading, creative writing, role play, just real-life conversations.
One of the reasons that I gravitate towards your presentations and what you do is because I was a teacher.
Yes.
But schools are not your only audiences.
Correct.
So that you speak with whom?
I would say the faith sector, business sectors.
Wow.
When you think about the overflow of violence and connect that with crime, and I know recently you joined us when we had a PI, prevention, intervention, and education, crime and violence PI session, prevention, intervention, and education. And you just look at when we think about the values of our homes, businesses shutting down, losing money and inventory due to individuals coming in stealing, or people breaking in homes or breaking in cars, it impacts the entire community. And so this is such an important conversation that I just want to present it in such a way to where the average person can gravitate and say, how can I do my part? Thus, the violence I prevent, and I is in quotation marks, because each individual has a role to play in terms of preventing violence, intervening, education, and that's what I do.
One of the things that you run into all the time, I suspect, because I have run into it myself, is the suspicion, in too many cases the actuality, that there is a particular community with greater impact than other communities. Do you find that that is the truth of the matter, And is there a trend going in one direction or another about most impacted clientele?
Well, typically, in using that hurt example again, it's in every community.
Thank you.
Every single community.
Come on.
And sometimes it is hidden, and sometimes it's kind of under the radar. But every single community has an element. When you think about domestic violence inside of the house, inside of relationships, when you think about community violence, when you think about gang violence, when you think about school violence, when you think about violence in general in society and the cultural glorification of violence, it's in every single area. And that's one of the stigmas that we have is this is an inner city problem, or this is a poverty problem only, and violence manifests everywhere. And I just do my part to educate on that particular element of it.
Wow.
That it's every single area. And we start ranking, well, it's happening more here or less here. But sometimes it just gets more media attention in certain places than others, but it's still going on. The stats are the same for domestic violence, for example, across the board.
My Lord.
In terms of how many people are impacted, whether they live in poverty, whether they live in a sense in wealth, it's just still going on. And when you think of the bullying and the things that go into that, bullying occurs in the home, whether the home has, a $750,000 annual income or the home has $50,000. If the hurt is not managed in the parents, they take it out on their kids, and their kids go to school and they take it out on their peers, the neighborhood, etc.
One of the things that I'm sure many of us are interested in is how it can be addressed on the micro level and the macro level, and do you partner with different entities to address the idiosyncratic behavior of particular cases?
Yes. And
that is so important.
And great question as well. But yeah, collaborate with over 500 since VIP, Violence I Prevent, started in August of 2013.
Wow.
So I have the opportunity to collaborate with more than 500 schools, organizations, businesses, churches, places of faith, and just to be able to look at it from that particular standpoint. Mr. Boyd, I often say, and I always out of respect call you Mr. Boyd, I'll just put this plug in and I finish my point, because recently I was speaking at a high school and I used the baton example.
Yes.
There are times where people will cross your path and they're running in the same race as you, and depending on which leg, they'll say, I need you to pick up this baton. And I met you in high school while you were doing your thing on KPRS Generation Rap.
My Lord.
And dropping knowledge. And so many of us learned through the airwaves. And in a sense, you were passing a baton to us to be kind of like active in our schools, active in our communities. And that was the seed that was planted in me.
Well, let me say to you that Brother Carl is fine. I'm not in any way offended by that. But I am particularly gratified that you remember the program.
Yes.
And that it might have sent some messages. I am quick to say, and I shall say ongoing, that the reason I was on a program that was popular was because of my guests. So that people were not tuning in to hear my dialogue. They were tuning in to hear people like a young Anthony Butler, to hear people like those with whom you collaborate now, who together can make a difference. Here's one thing that you get often and that I ponder myself, and that is something being measurable versus the difficulty in measuring. And that is, I'm sure you get the question often, when it is preventive, how do you measure it?
and that's, and going back to your original, the macro micro type from I would say, and I say this line poetically and I use it as an example because it's true, that this one never made the horrendous headline because someone like Brother Carl Boyd helped to change my mind.
My God. Well, that is so kind, and yet perpetually important.
Yes.
So as I ask and continue with different kind of clientele, will you please let us know how you can be contacted.
I'll say the best way is the website violenceiprevent.com. Violence, VIOLENC, as in crime.
Yes, sir.
VIOLENCE.com. Violence I Prevent, excuse me, I forgot to prevent. Violenceiprevent.com.
This is so very important. And let me tell you something that I will pursue with someone young like you, and that would be technology. That would be various social media.
Mm-hmm.
When I think about how we communicate with each other now, and certainly more those who are younger than I, do you find that social media have a profound impact in a negative direction, a positive direction? I suspect both in some cases. But what are the trends now, 2024?
I'll say the example I can best give is like social media. It's like money. It's how you spend it.
Okay.
And so
Okay.
the trends that when we think about the money analogy, money can be neutral.
Yes, sir.
And you can use it for positivity to get things in a positive way. But then on the flip side, if you use it for the negative side and all of that, the trend is typically, sad to say, there's more negative content out there, and we as an audience need to do a better job of having more standards and boundaries of what we think is entertainment, because that's why the negative side is trending more than the positive side, because people want the negativity. They want the social media feuds. They want the beefs. They want all of the drama and conflict, so to speak, because it's a form of entertainment. And then that type, when you look at it from that perspective, spills over into many of our violence headlines. There are law enforcement agencies who track individuals who are posting criminal behavior online and getting so many views, and they end up getting caught to the point of how it is being funneled and used in a negative way, that they will post live criminal behavior and things of that nature. But I just say from the way I look at it is using social media in a positive way, in an educational way, in a prevention way, in an intervening way is something that I try to get the word out about in terms of doing that.
Interestingly enough, at my age, I grew up during the era. Now, for purposes of this conversation, I am spelling era E-R-A.
Okay.
But when I look back on it, sometimes I want to say E-R-R-O-R. But during an era when there was something called, in a cliche-ish way, quote, cowboys and Indians, unquote.
Mm-hmm.
And these were exciting movies because the cavalry would come in, and the evolution of that type of violent entertainment grew to the point where we would be disappointed in an action movie if there wasn't enough blowing up, if there wasn't enough shooting, if there wasn't enough explosion, all of those kinds of things. And will you please, being the expert that you are, help some to understand that violence in media, with the growth that we are seeing, really is dangerous.
It absolutely is. And there was a stat, and I believe it's still accurate, or in general, the point that I will make coming up is accurate, that by the age of 18, the average person would have seen over 100,000 acts of violence via the media outlet by the age of 18. And I could be off in terms of, it could be 120,000, 160,000, but they would have seen 16,000 murders by the age of 18 via what they're consuming in terms of on TV, entertainment, video games. And that causes that desensitized mindset that needs to be reprogrammed, because when you think it's that normal, it becomes normal.
Yes, sir.
And that's one of the reasons why in many of the schools that I'm in, and I use this as an example where I'm speaking, I don't care if it's elementary, middle, high school, college, I said if a fight broke out, what's the first thing people will do? they'll get their phones out
Can
and
you
make
imagine?
videos.
Yes, sir.
and
Isn't that is just
that's just the desensitized nature that we have turned it into something like, oh, let me record it and get some views from this.
exactly.
And so, like going back, and that micro is still in my mind. And I'm thinking about the parenting piece, like in this conversation is just throwing out. I thank God, became a dad at 19, married my high school sweetheart. Shout out to Sandra Butler.
Praise God. Now,
Still married.
Praise God.
And thank God for
you.
that.
Congratulations to you and to her.
Yes. But as young parents, we just knew with God's help, we had to set the tone with our kids.
Yes,
we had
sir.
to model peace. We had to model certain things. And of course, we made a lot of mistakes and things like that. But it was just important for us to be the number one influence on our kids during those formative ages. When they went to school reading and literate, and there's a direct correlation between illiteracy and crime and violence.
Yes, sir.
So we made it a point to make sure our kids were educated from the house before they hit the school. And by the time they went to school, they were above grade level.
Praise God.
But it was a priority to us to make sure. We character too.
Yes, sir. And I will say, so please, no need to repeat our relationship, because you're so kind to me, and I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
But as it relates to positive influence, what is the relationship of what you do to your personal relationship with Jesus Christ on a real sense?
That's the force and the drive behind everything.
Yes, sir.
My personal relationship with Jesus Christ carried me through every season, even present, of my life. That's where you get wisdom. That's where you get a certain level of understanding prayer life. That's where
Yes,
you
sir.
pray for peace and you model it. And in many cases, in secular settings, I can't go in certain settings and say,
Right.
I'm a believer in Jesus Christ in a school setting, but the kids will see the light of Christ on you.
Thank you.
And they'll come up to me oftentimes and say, you're a Christian, you go to church and things like that. And then, of course, when I speak in churches, it's just an open door to kind of scripturally and using the Word of God as an instrument and a resource to help individuals.
Praise the Lord.
And when you just think about all of that pain inside of someone, and just to give them hope and give them a sense of peace and let them know, even if they're on the flipped end and they were the one putting the criminal behavior on people, that you are new in Christ Jesus, and just letting them know that.
Let me ask this question of you. You were kind enough to allow us to use one of your video presentations.
Yes, sir.
And during that presentation, particularly as it was culminating, there was this spontaneous round of applause. And as it relates to your presentations, young people, and for that matter, not only the young people, but those who teach them, those who, counsel and work with them, come to you with remarks, obviously, that are positive. But what are some of the kinds of reactions you get from what you do?
Well, number one, they're just so relieved that it's not the typical lecture. That when I walk
that's
into
good.
a room, I usually hit them with some sort of poetic phrase
Yes, sir.
or some sort of interactive activity that gets them involved, and I share the stage with them. So their reaction is very excitable,
Yes.
enthusiastic.
Yes.
And again, I share the stage. I invite many of the students to join me. I ask them, what type of gifts do you have? And I say, use your gifts to uplift as well. That while we're having this presentation, if you feel led, come on up. And even if you don't, encouraging them to get up
Wow.
and speak and share. And it's kind of like the creativity of this particular generation that I see. You just think about how many of them are already singing and writing and rapping,
Yes, sir.
and you just get that to
Yes,
be
sir.
used in an avenue to where use your gifts to uplift. And
Praise
so
God.
it's a great reception, great interaction. They receive me because I share the stage with them and have them join me.
Before we go to our break, Sister DeQuay, I'll just ask this one quick question. I imagine it will not take you very long to answer it.
Yes, sir.
You're getting positive responses, and you're getting people who want to communicate with you, want
Yes.
to get some interaction. And we, DeQuay, saw that piece with which we opened. So please answer this question for me. How much profanity did you use in what you present? Just curious.
0 words.
Thank you. Absolutely.
0.
For somebody to suggest that they can only communicate in one particular way,
Right.
they need to hear your presentation to young people who can appreciate the way. And by the way, even though you said 3 to 103,
Yes.
most of those I have seen you work with are younger than you.
Yes.
But they not only respect you at your age and how much older than they,
Mm-hmm.
but they admire. And
Yes.
that is commendable. Thank you for that. I'm going to turn it over to DeQuay
Yes.
Wilson, and we'll be back after this.
Reminding our 7th through 12th grade students that you can win a monetary award from our sponsoring organization, Stutes for Boots. Your essay title will be Heroes You Know You Didn't Know Were Heroes. Your content will identify a veteran at your school who can be absolutely anyone, administrator, custodian, teacher, absolutely anyone. If your essay is chosen and submitted by an adult who gives you permission to read it on this Waive Your Grades program, you will be awarded a monetary prize. Please send entry or inquiry to stootsforboots@gmail.com. That is STOOTSFORBOOTS, stootsforboots@gmail.com. Now back to our host, Carl Boyd.
Thank you so very, very much, DeQuay Wilson. Anything that you would like to express or ask? And it's interesting, Brother Butler, going through this almost every week, but often when the program is over, DeQuay has such profound additions to what has been said. I try to get her to do it while the program is going on. And I want to be sure, because I'm addressing my guest,
No
that I
problem.
don't miss when she is coming in. And so just please, and you know that. So we appreciate you so very, very much. Once again, contact information and the kinds of audiences you address, because there are certainly more than just a few.
Yes. violenceiprevent.com is the website. Best way to contact me on that site. Also, I'm an author as well. The books are listed on that site as well. violenceiprevent.com.
Now, before you did this and you saw the need for it, how did you approach it? Were there a number of ways that you were going about how to impact the violence that's going on around us? Or was it singular? You thought of prevention and you just went with it?
You know, I always thought about, we do case studies many times on the ones that are in jail or more opt than the ones who didn't make it.
Yes, sir.
And so
Ooh.
the foundation that I thought about was, there's so many case studies of people who grew up in the same environment, the same
Yes.
zip codes, the same background, so to speak, as the ones who, in a sense, made a wrong series of decisions to get themselves in the position that they're in. But what about the ones who grew up in the same, in a sense, atmosphere and environment and did not succumb to it?
Thank you.
And that began to be the genesis of Violence I Prevent. What were some of the things that these people were doing, including myself, who grew up around gangs, who grew up around
Yes,
guns,
sir.
who grew up around poverty, who grew up within it, around it, and all, you know, when you think about T.B. Watkins Housing Project and Shoto Housing Project and East 9th Street and East 14th Street, and you just look around those environments where you are, in a sense, growing up without a dad, the same similar conditions that a lot of people, in a sense, give into. I thought about that being the foundation of what were some of the things that people like me leveraged and used not to turn into a career criminal or terrorize your own neighborhood, so to speak, where you're going in and just doing horrible things to people within the same walking distance and stealing from just so many environments. And we did some stuff growing up, absolutely. There came a pivotal moment when you go back to what environments I look at in the schools, I had educators who, in a sense, gave me hope. And
Yes,
and,
sir.
in churches, you had people in your Sunday school class or pastors giving you hope. And then sometimes you go into certain restaurants or just stores, and you just see people just treating you with dignity and give you hope. And that kind of led to decisions to deal with the pain that we all go through, the hurt that I mentioned earlier. How can I take that hurt and use it in a positive way so that I can be able to say that our kids didn't have to grow up in the same environments with all of the crime and violence and things like that?
Praise God. As a matter of fact, you make me mindful of a book, and thank you for writing. That is so important because that is something that I can go back to. I can refer back to that. I can have it in front of me all the time. And the current mayor of Baltimore, Maryland,
Yes.
is a gentleman whose name is Wes Moore.
Okay.
And he signed a book for me. I don't know where we were, but we were somewhere together. But the title of the book is The Other Wes Moore.
Okay.
And he writes about someone, same name, similar background, went in a different direction.
Yes.
And that is so important. I pray that many of us will read such a book because young people need to know it is possible.
Yes.
Not only that, let me ask you if this is something that has occurred to you. It has occurred to me that many people will expect ridicule because of the side of the fence that you're on. And nobody wants to deal with a chunk brother like you talking that stuff. You have found, I have found that more of them respect and appreciate than those who ridicule.
Absolutely.
That is so important in the society in which we live, particularly from the technological side and social media, because there are those who would have you to believe that the preponderance of the negative messaging is very violent, very scary, as a matter of fact. Therefore, I'm going to beg off, as I admit to my technophobia from time to time. But where can our young people get positive messaging as far as that world of prevention is concerned?
I think about where do they naturally go?
Okay.
And that's where the parenting piece come in, because oftentimes if it's generational hurt going on and generational trauma, we typically take it out on our students. So we offer parent sessions to help the parents be able to navigate through that and help them to remember what it was like when they were in the position of their kids, so to speak. Libraries, when we had our crime and violence pie event,
Yes,
students
sir.
naturally go to the library.
Yes, sir.
And so we partnered with some
is true.
Kansas City, Missouri Southeast Branch Library,
Wow.
and we're doing a series of prevention, intervention, and education sessions because they naturally go there. The schools, if they're not homeschooled, they're going to naturally go to school. And so I just put it in a way to where they're going to have to run into this. And so partnering with the schools to be able to have a piece of their curriculum, so to speak, that deals with the real life issues of learning your conflict style, learning decision making, learning anger management, learning what to do when you the bully or the bullied, how to learn to mediate conflicts. And again, everything is age appropriate, where you put it in the terminology and language that they get.
Yes.
And it resonates with them because someone actually followed up and followed through. Many of the students will, quote unquote, start out telling individuals when they're being bullied or talked about. And the number one thing they tell me, and it's not even close, is said, I told someone and they didn't do anything.
Wow.
And so I go in and just say, we're going to have to start doing something
That
because
is so important.
this is prevention.
Yes, sir.
If we follow up and follow through and provide an outlet to alleviate that conflict from turning into the next murder, so to speak, or the next non-fatal shooting, or the next feud that's in the neighborhood or the community, we have done some good work to prevent it before it starts.
Please use this forum on this day at this time to help someone who has joined us to understand that if legitimately, if seriously, if truthfully you find that you don't quite know what to do, please invite them to please contact you.
Yes, yes. ViolenceIPrevent.com. Reach out and I'll follow up for sure.
And I mean, this is real.
Yes,
It is not something where you're going to leave them hanging.
absolutely.
Because even things that you and I, even things we don't know, we know somebody.
Yes.
But don't leave somebody out there.
I remember Mr. Board, it was a student at an area high school, and his friend got murdered.
Ooh.
And he reached out through a presentation that I did, and he told one of the staff members, in the heart of retaliation, wanting to strike back, they said, did you get Mr. Butler? I want to talk to Mr. Butler.
Wow.
And so went up to that school and
Wow.
talked him out of retaliating, and also available, encouraging him that, yes, validating, yes, it hurts because your friend lost his life senselessly, and letting him vent and get out whatever. But he had a point person that came up and actually spoke with him face to face.
Ooh.
And again, I just met him through doing probably once a month or twice a month presentations in his high school. And as the students say, game recognized game. He peeped out pretty quick that this guy is sincere.
Thank
you.
you.
So he tracked me down. And so he said, get Mr. Butler up here. And I came up there.
See, this is so wonderful in this from this perspective, that there are those people, and now myriad folks, who want to reach out to Anthony Butler, and you can honestly testify to them that young people don't respond to you because they're afraid of your violence, because you're so tough, because you're going to beat them up or what. No, they know you're sincere.
Absolutely. And that's, and when we look at it, even from no matter what age we are, when we come across authentic, sincere, transparent people,
Yes, sir.
who are willing to share, that's why I said earlier, and I say it throughout, we did some things, I did some things growing up that I'm not proud of.
Thank
and
you.
it just got to the point to where you start thinking about, I could have handled that situation better. I could have managed my anger better. I could have not been petty and try to retaliate, or just let in a sense my lack of conflict skills get the best of me. And whether it was fighting or cussing back in the day, it's
Yes,
just
sir.
like that was the number one and number two option. Respectfully, was either cuss somebody out or fight. And,
Yes, sir.
then you develop a different skill set. And that's why it's just such important to be able to educate in a transparent way, to give some strategies. And many times students will say, just using anger as a common one, I just got anger problems. And just to say, do you know anger is a secondary emotion? Like, what are you talking about?
Come on.
And then you break it down and say, look, before you get angry, all
Come
these
on.
other things are happening first.
Yes.
Whether you were afraid, whether you were jealous, whether you felt disrespected, whether you were agitated. And I said, if you can catch it in this phase before it gets to anger, and you just say, okay, let me just take a deep breath. Let me pause before I do something. Let me walk away. I said, I would rather you, if you're in a situation, you're about to punch somebody in the middle of a classroom, step outside the door.
Yes, sir.
And just calm down.
Yes, sir.
And I'd rather you take that consequence if somebody said you walked out without permission than getting into a fight, and then also educating the teacher ahead of time. Say, hey, if such and such just need to get in, just calm down before they swing. It's those types of conversations that make a difference, but it started through educating. Why are you angry? When
Yes.
did it happen?
Absolutely.
Helping the individual understand those sub questions that led to it, and letting them know anger is a secondary emotion
Yes.
that signifies that something that's not right. It's almost like a warning system going off. And if my warning system, in a sense, is off, I'm going to get angry over things that shouldn't even elicit that type of response.
This is so very, very important. I'm wondering whether or not you already do or would be amenable to teaching a class, even for college level credit, on violence prevention. We saw you at the opening making a presentation to an audience.
Yes.
What are the various types of ways you communicate?
I'll say in terms of keynote speaking, breakout speaking, and
Yes, sir.
conferences. Sometimes online doing virtual things where individuals will reach out for a particular topic. There's also via writing, sometimes just having an opportunity to share something that I've written and breaking that down. Many times when I go into school, I will have copies from, it's a workbook called the Right Away Experience, where we use creative writing to deal with some of those areas, what I mentioned about anger, bullying, conflicts, decision making, emotional management. I do it in a way to where they creatively write and learn at the same time. So just different means of that.
Let me tell you something some educators have said to you.
Yes, sir.
Believe this. And that is, our children for the last few decades, in fact, write less than they used to.
Correct.
And they appreciate your giving them this opportunity.
Yes, yes. They will write away, and it's wordplay, but it's so true. They will write away when they have something that connects, when they understand it, and then you can use that in a sense to get them to write about things that they think is boring because you're teaching character through it.
Anthony Butler, do you know that we have had conversations among those who have taught before and even some who are talking, who insist that our children cannot write and won't write? What do you mean won't? Are you giving the opportunity? So do you find that the writing experience is not the only experience to which young people respond, but there are other things that my generation no longer use that you use effectively?
I'll say the writing, the speaking. There are class clowns in every environment, and I get up and do it. I just say, "Come on, give me a funny skit," and I give them some boundaries, and they will again share the stage, and they will also movement. You know, and the research backs it up. When students are moving throughout the class period, whether you have a 45-minute blocker or if you're in a classroom with the same group all day, you got to mix in movement where students can get up and dance or move or just do different things, where they actually are not just sitting still all day. And again, when you include them in the presentation, so to speak, you don't have to worry so much about classroom management in terms of students just not following directions and things like that. If you teach those procedures and routines at the beginning of the year and sprinkle in the expectations throughout, you'll have kids who don't want to leave your classroom because they know they're going to be center stage, star of the show.
Let me tell you how old I am. I started teaching in the 60s.
Yes, sir.
In the 60s, there was not an emphasis on multiple intelligences. So this student who was bothersome, moved around too much, just needs to go in a corner somewhere. I didn't hear about students who were kinesthetic.
Right.
This student who was in the 8th row and could not get her notes right, and I didn't realize that she was visual and needed to get closer to the board. This student who was coming in, squinting the eyes and all of that, I didn't know that student was auditory. So therefore, the multiple intelligences were a problem to be punished rather than a learning style to be encouraged.
That's right. And getting to know, it's so important to get to know your students. And the best way to get to know someone is not to make it as difficult as it may seem. Just ask them.
Thank you.
I mean, I'll give them a get to know sheet coming in as a presenter from the outside. Fill this out. And they'll start giving me the keys to the kingdom about themselves. So
let me tell you, I have a sheet of 12 do this tomorrows is what I call them.
Yes, sir.
Do this tomorrow. And number 6 is use the Weckel method, and that's Weckel. Mr. Weckel was my geometry teacher.
Okay.
My brother, who was older than I, had Mr. Weckel for trigonometry. Now, when my brother left his class, he said, "Man, Mr. Weckle is cool." Now, wait a minute. My brother could outdance anybody in Ida B. Wells projects. My brother knew how to use slang. My brother was the coolest dude on the face of the earth. Mr. Weckle was a white dude with a pot belly, 3-inch thick glasses, the total antipathy of anything called cool. And my brother said, "Mr. Weckle is cool." Now I come in, I have Mr. Weckle for geometry. This is the Weckle method. He didn't call it that, but this is the way he would do. We are engaged in a certain kind of equation that's important to learn. A student raises his hand and says, "Mr. Weckle, are we going to have class next Wednesday?" The typical teacher response is, "Anthony, that's not what we're talking about now. Let me give you the Weckle method. Mr. Weckle, are we going to have class next?" Mr. Weckle said, "Anthony, I'm glad you asked that question.
Yes.
Because if you were thinking about it, someone else in class might be thinking about it. And we are going to have a day when the Accreditation Society is going to be visiting us, but we are going to have class because they want to see just how we do it." Is there anybody else who has a question about that? And now let's go back to quadratic equations. Now, it did not matter what question was ever asked to Mr. Weckle. His answer began with, "I'm glad you asked that question."
You're talking about dignifying and being respectful to
My goodness.
and that right there is the Weckle.
and the thing about it is, some people suspected, no, you can't use that method because children will take advantage of it. The opposite is true. They will not take advantage because they appreciate
Yes.
you dignifying.
Yes.
That is, and I want to make sure before we get to the end of the hour or near the end of the hour, that you bring to us what is important in whatever presentation that you make. That is something that you don't want to go to the parking lot having forgotten that we said.
Well, I'll say this. I call affectionately research-based, poetically paced, common sense laced is the way I try to carry myself in every presentation. And when you think about the research-based, poetically paced, common sense laced type of information that's plaguing not only the Kansas City area but cities around the world, on average, when you look at the amount of homicides we had over the last 5 years, about 160 homicides per year. This year is a slow down between 525 and 500 or 600 non-fatal shootings. The rise of crime in terms of people stealing motor vehicles and things of that nature. And when you just move the data, and last year there were over 9,000 reported motor vehicle thefts in Kansas City, Missouri alone. And I'm citing the KCPD, and I got the stats, and I'll give you the handout when I get out of here. But when you just think about how rampant those things are going on and how it affects the quality of life, I just want to leave people with a charge and a call to action. No matter if you live in the suburbs or in the inner city,
Come on.
there is a prevalent rise of people being comfortable engaging in criminal and violent behavior because many people are going in, closing their doors and not saying anything, or just thinking this is an urban problem. And so I want to leave the audience to say, do what you can do, whether you're in Blue Springs, Kansas City, Lee Summit, Raytown, Belton, KCK, the greater Kansas City area is like one big family when you think of how close it is, proximity to other places. And crime is spreading everywhere.
Yes, sir.
And we have to take that call to action to say, what can I do to make my home safe? What can I do to make my community safe? What can I do to make our schools safe? What can I do to make our society safe? And how can I keep businesses, in a sense, in our areas who want to do business because they don't want to, be in a criminal type of environment?
You are so important in this particular arena, not only because there are too few people like you, but also when schools, and particularly K through 12, but you have also seen this, I'm sure, in the college community as well, and that is this. My name is Anthony Butler, and I have something called Violence I Prevent in case there are young people who might benefit from my presentation. They immediately say out loud, or they certainly think and reflect on it later, is it research based?
Yes.
Your research is so key. Some people think that you are a well meaning young man who wants to do something, and this is great, but it cannot be validated without the research.
Absolutely. The research, the numbers are the numbers, and that's
My
why
goodness.
I spewed off. And if I misquoted a number, I got the exact here. I didn't want to pull out papers in the middle of it.
No.
But in terms of the research, is there. And it's just a matter of looking at that and say, from using the common
My
sense
goodness.
angle, what can I do in a common
Yes,
sense way
sir.
to know if I'm going to have roughly 160 homicides a year, roughly 15 homicides the last 3 years of students who are 17 years and younger? If I know this has happened annually before it happens, what am I going to do to stop it? And if I know the root reasons before it happens, what am I going to do to stop it? And that's kind of like the core of what I do. You look at the data and say, if this is coming down a pike, I'm going to do something to prevent it before it manifests.
Thank you so very, very much. Before we get to the end of the program, let me ask whether or not you have recognized trends, negative or positive.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the trends that when we look at our motor vehicle thefts, and I mentioned that, it is on the rise. The last 5 years, it has risen every single year the last 5 years, with the apex being over 9,000 in 2023, and we're on pace this year in 2024 to eclipse the motor vehicles being stolen more than 9,000. So I collaborate with KCPD and got some great insight in looking at the data.
Today is Saturday. And the Chiefs play Sunday, don't they? So has Travis Kelce or Mahomes contacted you yet? Well, you need let them play tomorrow and then give them a call Monday. But I can honestly vouch for our guest today that whether it's the NBA or the NFL, looking at trends and understanding, we could do a whole program on just that.
Absolutely.
Seriously.
Yes, sir.
In terms of people who are affluent or who are that visible.
Yes, and I'll say this quickly in 10 seconds or less. When the affluent gets affected, it gets more media attention. And when the normal everyday, it's kind of like that's the expectation. And
Yes.
so my heart goes out to anyone, whether they're affluent or not. But I just feel that we need to have that same energy when it's anybody.
Yes, sir. Thank you so very, very much. God bless you.
Yes, sir.
We have been with Anthony Butler on Wave Your Grades, and this has been an enlightening discussion. Don't be surprised when we call on you again.
Yes,
but
sir.
thank you for responding on this occasion.
You're welcome. Bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me turn it over to DeQuay Wilson.
I would like to take this opportunity to thank our guest and our listeners for joining us on your Wave Your Grades program from Stoots for Boots. We do come to you live every Saturday from 1 until 2 p.m. Central Standard Time from the W.E.B. Du Bois Learning Center right here in Kansas City, Missouri. I am your announcer, DeQuay Wilson. Now our host, Carl Boyd, will close with either Carl's commentary on academic patriotism or his daily message for students in honor of our veterans from his book, Morning Messages.
Thank you so very, very much, and a profound thank you once again to our very special guest,
sir.
Anthony Butler. Violence I Prevent, and that is so important, prevention.
Yes, sir.
I have this book, it's called Morning Messages, and this is a message for our students in behalf of those who serve, those who have served. To students across the USA, your Stoots for Boots message for this day, November 23rd. Students are not as heroic as troops, but troops say you're equally important. Students are not as heroic as troops, but troops say you're equally important. This has been Wave Your Grades on KUAW.org. DeQuay Wilson is our producer. She is our engineer, our announcer, and our co-host. Thank you to very special guest, Brother Anthony Butler. This is Carl Boyd saying, gracious God and wonderful Wanda, I'm on my way home.